Well, evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. As John said, this is a talk about the Wales Marsh Fritillary Recovery Partnership. This is more a bit of an intro to the project, and at the end, John's going to tell you a little bit about how you can get involved. So this is a bit of a taster, I suppose, but the real stuff is getting outside and getting involved. So hopefully this will whet your appetite and you'll want to get involved with us. So it's quite a bit to cover. I'm going to go through quite a bit. I said out on sites where you get the bulk of it. We're going to talk a little bit about butterfly conservation Wales, the Marsh Fritillary, why are we here, why have we got a project for it, a little bit about its ecology and its life history. And then we'll move down to what we're doing as part of the project. So I'll start moving now. And if John doesn't stop talking, I assume everyone can see my slides. So first of all, guys, butterfly conservation. We are led by everything we do by our current conservation strategy. There's lovely Wales, and you can see some green blobs, some green polygons. These are what are called our priority landscapes. These have been set in Wales based on where our priority species are. So, of course, we can't be everywhere and do everything. So what we do is we're targeting the most threatened species of butterfly and moth. And these polygons indicate where both of those, where the most important species of both butterflies and moth are found. Let me just, so you've been recorded to get rid of that. So priority landscapes, it's all about bigger, better, more joined. The Lawton principle, guys, the idea being that no matter how well you manage a single site or nature reserve, the butterflies and moths found there are still vulnerable to a variety of factors. So the idea being we create larger, more resilient areas of habitat. This will support larger populations. A larger population is more resistant to future challenges. And the way that butterfly conservation works with our evidence base that goes back to our data collection from things from the 1970s onwards is we use lepidopters as indicators of success of management interventions. They are really sensitive to environmental change, and it's been proven that they are indicators of healthy and functioning ecosystems. So that's the strategy and how we're going. So our priority species of butterfly, star of the show here, the Marsh Fritillary. We also have the pearl-bordered fritillary, grizzled skipper, and the high brown fritillary, and then large sheath and brown hair streak. So these are priority species of butterfly, but of course then there are also secondary species of butterfly. I should say, so these are the priorities in Wales. And then secondary species, for example, we've got the wood white, which is found just on the borders here of the Wye Valley. We've got the silver-studded blue, and we've got the small pearl-bordered fritillary. And of course then there's even more moths. I've just pulled out two examples as two day flyers. We've got the forester here, this lovely metallic green, and we've got the drab looper, and that's an oxeye daisy, guys, to give you an idea of the size. And its stronghold is down over here in Monmouthshire. So wherever you see those priority landscapes, it's been assessed by the most threatened species, and that's where we try to focus our work to give us a little bit of direction and steer, so we don't run around everywhere trying to be everywhere where we can't. So we'll look to work with partners in these landscapes, landowners, farmers, other EGNGOs like the National Trust, the Wildlife Trust, whoever it might be. If they want to work to protect Lepidoptera, we'll work with them. So here's the start of the show. This is the Marsh Fritillary. I thought I'd start off with this slide just to show you just how variable they can be in appearance. The way I always remember Marsh Fritillaries, they are our most colourful fritillary, but I always think of them as having like stained glass windows on their wings. That way it'll pull it apart from most other fritillaries, but as you can see, huge variations. To give you an example, this individual here and this individual here, they are from the same site, and you can see just how much how much difference there is. The underside of the wing, to show you here, I mean, we'll get into potential confusion species that you may see on the wing with marsh tree at the same time. But the way I was remembering, you've got this white line here, you've got this inner brown margin here, and you've got these eye spots in the middle. That's why I always remember the Marsh Fritillary. Then as they do become faded and worn, as they're becoming on, they can take on this appearance here, and they can lose a bit of colour. They look quite greasy, and sometimes in some of the older textbooks you will see them referred to as the greasy fritillary. So I've just put that one on to give you an idea, but still you can make out this stained glass window effect, and also you've got this row of spots on here again on the inner margin. So every time you look at a Marsh Fritillary, you'll see that row of spots there as well. So practice is everything, guys, getting out there, but just don't rely on one picture is what I would say, because there's huge variation in colour, and even within a site. So Marsh Fritillary, why are we focusing on the Marsh Fritillary? Why is it a priority species? This is the distribution of Marsh Fritillary here. You can see it's predominantly in the west of Britain and also Northern Ireland. And it's as protected as they come, guys. For butterfly conservation, it's a high priority for us. It's a Section 7 species here in Wales. It's on equivalent lists in the other nations of the UK, in Northern Ireland, Scotland, and England. It's vulnerable to the European status, and it's also fully protected under the 1981 Wildlife and Countryside Act. That's Marsh Fritillary is only one of 5 butterflies which holds this fully protected 81 Act. So, yeah, it's as high a priority as it comes throughout its range. I just want to pull up a few stats here specific to Wales. This is from my State of Butterflies report, the most recent one in 2022. The black text shows you the Marsh Fritillary's status at a UK level. Please note the differences in years, guys. So if we look at the UK first, from 1981 to 2019, the abundance of the Marsh Fritillary, it's gone down, but not significantly. It's gone down quite minimally. But you can look at distribution at a UK scale, and it's gone down by almost 50%. So that is quite a massive drop since 1985. But if we look at Wales now, put out Wales stats, we can see the distribution actually, it's gone up marginally. It's gone up since 1994. But then we look at abundance, and we've seen a huge crash of over 60% since 1990. So a different story is going on in Wales, that they're staying, give or take, where they're found, but the numbers are declining quite dramatically. And we'll go into factors affecting that and what this project is hoping to address to reverse that quite worrying situation. So once widespread in Britain and Ireland, but declined severely over the 20th century. Marsh Fritillary populations, guys, are highly volatile. The species requires extensive areas of habitats or habitat networks for its long-term survival. So that bigger, better, more joined I talked about the first. The Marsh Fritillary is a really good case study of how a species needs that connectivity at a landscape scale. And no matter how well anybody looks after an individual site, the Marsh Fritillary could still disappear, no matter how well it's managed. Numbers can fluctuate greatly. You can have a colony of thousands one year, you come back and they're gone. A couple of years later, they're back again. They are what's described as a classic boom and bust species. There's a boom in population, lots of them, and there's a bust, they crash. And we'll get into the importance of that and why we think the Marsh Fritillary population does boom and bust in that way. So this is just a real crude example, guys. So I've just pulled out a picture on purpose with lots of square fields just to make the slides more simplistic. So it's a bit of ecology now, guys. So going back to school, I guess, or university, we're talking about meta populations now. So very crudely, guys, if you imagine for each one of those dots is a field that is home to a Marsh Fritillary population. That could be a nature reserve that the Wildlife Trust own. It could be the National Trust. It could be a triple SI where NLW manage it. It could be a farmer. It could be whatever. Just it's a site where the Marsh Fritillary is found. Now, what I want you to imagine, guys, this is the field where the Marsh Fritillary is. The Marsh Fritillary will wander. It has a dispersal range. So very crudely, let's imagine that's how far the Marsh Fritillary will fly from that site, like a really basic buffer. You can see that actually it can fly and it could meet this site here. So in a way, those two sites are connected. And then again, we go this way. If those guys fly the same again, we can meet these two sites. Down to this slide, guys, just look at this field here they're found. And I looked at this when we did, so they can reach this site here and so on and so on. So all these sites are connected at a landscape scale. So for example, this population here, let's say we had a bust and this population crashed. Oh, I've gone the wrong way. I'm sorry, guys. Let's say this site here crashed. All of a sudden, we lose the connectivity. So these sites are still connected and these ones are, but without this, they're not connected. But let's just say the next year they have a really good year and the Marsh Fritillary fly back out to this site. We're connected again. So the meta population is thriving. But the problem we're getting, guys, is if this site, I'll go back again, that site is lost to, it could be a variety of factors, guys. It could be development, it could be agriculture. I don't want to bash farmers here, guys. We all want to go to supermarket. We all want to eat food. There's many fantastic farmers out there who manage the land sympathetically for wildlife. But as an example, let's just say this was modified by agriculture. If then the Marsh Fritillary can't get back to that site, it's been modified to such an extent, these sites are isolated from each other. So when we have that boom and bust, it's much more fragile, and that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see that the meta population can't function as it was across a landscape scale, with increasing pressure on it, with less and less land and more pressures being put upon it for a variety of factors. So I hope that made sense. That's a really crude example. The natural reasons, so you're all wondering, okay, that's a human influence. Why does that happen naturally? I just wanted to pull that up. The first one, there's three leading reasons. The first one is environmental variables. So weather, guys. I mean, you think about this time last year, how wet and how cold it was. That's going to impact the Marsh Fritillary development. It's also thought that larvae, when they're pupating, they're more vulnerable to being predation because they're there for much longer, being delayed. Whereas when it's better weather, they have a better year. So in theory, this year there should be lots of Marsh Fritillaries because it's been a fantastic spring, and the caterpillars will develop that bit quicker. So that's the one thing, is the weather, which of course is natural. We will get good summers, we will get bad summers, and in between. So the larger the area, the larger we've got all this, the better. Whatever the weather throws at us, the Marsh Fritillaries they're more resilient for when it comes. The other reason is when we do have a boom year, so when there's lots of them, it reduces the availability of the larval host plant. I'll come to that in a wee bit. That devil's a bit scabious, but larval host plant is where the butterflies lay their eggs and what the food the caterpillar eats. So if there's lots of caterpillars and lots of munchy mouths, of course that means much less food. So there's lots of caterpillars now eating all the food. Next year there won't be as many. So in effect, they eat themselves out of house and home. That's how I try to describe that one. And again, that's a natural cycle. So they may crash. The larval food plant will thrive the next year, and vice versa. You have these peaks and troughs of a larval food plant alongside the butterflies thriving. Of course, if the larval host plant is impacted by development or something, then of course we're going to lose it. So that's how some of the pressures of modern life. And the last one is there is a parasitoid wasps. So parasitoid guys are different to parasites. Parasites will happily live inside its host and they won't kill it. They want to keep it alive because it's providing all their nutrition and it gives them a home. But a parasitoid is something that does eventually kill its host. And the Marsh Fritillary does have an intimate relationship with parasitoid wasps, where the wasps will lay their eggs inside the caterpillars. The wasp grubs will develop inside and they will keep the caterpillar. It's quite gruesome, guys. They'll keep the caterpillar as live as long as they can. They will then pop out the side of it as it dies, and they will then turn into a wasp. I would just add, guys, the Marsh Fritillary is extremely rare. The parasitoid wasps are even rarer, so they deserve looking after in their own right, and it is an intimate relationship. So try to think of it as those boom years when all the caterpillars eat all the devil's bit scabious plants. If they're in check, if you want to use that crude term, with the parasitoid, it will prevent that. So again, you'll see peaks and troughs of the parasitoid wasps alongside the butterflies. So that's an intimate relationship where they've evolved alongside each other. It's when it's interfered with, when this can't function at the landscape scale, that's when we have to start worrying about it. But that just explains naturally why it happens. But yeah, the minute it can't function, that's the problems we've got. So we have to try and address that. So a little bit about Marsh Fritillaries, so they're found in grassland habitats where the larval host plant is widespread. There's three main types throughout the UK. There's damp grasslands dominated by tussocky forming grasses. They're also found in chalk and limestone grasslands, usually on west and south facing slopes in England, sometimes in the coast, and they also can be found in large, like over a hectare, woodland clearings and other grasslands. But in Wales, they're predominantly found in damp grasslands, what locally we call rose pasture. And rose pasture is increasingly rare, and it's estimated that over 90% of these semi-natural grasslands were lost in Wales during the 20th century. So where the Marsh Fritillary thrives, and those grass habitats, we've lost 90% of them. So that just shows you what they're up against. And yeah, it's quite a scary stat. So here's just two pictures, an example of the lovely rose pasture. It's species-rich grassland, guys. We've got a lot of it in Wales, and we should be very, very proud of what we've got. This is a photo of it in more towards autumn time. You can see devil's bit scabious here. It's a later flowering species. This is a different site earlier in the year where you've got ragged robin and there's a few orchids in there, and they can take on all manner of appearance and different species compositions. No one site is the same. Everywhere you go, they will be subtly different, and they will support a whole suite of species, not just the Marsh Fritillary. The way that we butterfly conservation work is we look after the grasslands and we use the Marsh Fritillary as the indicator of success. So if the site is well managed, there's lots of Marsh Fritillaries, they're moving throughout the landscape. We know those grasslands are connected at the landscape scale, and other associated wildlife will also thrive with the Marsh Fritillaries. Two more examples here, guys. So this one you can see there's a lot more common spotted orchids. We've got a site here with tusky grasslands, lots of heather. And then to give you an idea of what I mean by tusky grass is here's just two sites that were grazed by cattle. So you can see just how tusky that grass is dominated by millennia, lots of millennia grasses, but they're absolutely beautiful. When people think of species-rich grasslands, they commonly think of southern England and the chalk and limestone, which are absolutely stunning, guys. But we should shout more about these roast pastures we have here in Wales. They're absolutely beautiful. They might be wet, they might be difficult to get around, but they're very, very special and they're very species rich. And then just to show you on the other side of it, come the winter time. So here's a lovely Welsh mountain pony who likes to eat all the grass. This is what it can look like back in the winter. And just wanted to show you this. You can hopefully make out these tussocky bits of the grassland. It's not uniform. It's not like a bowling green, for example. It's not like it's been mown. This is what we want, which I'll come to in the poems when I try to mention tussocky grassland over the winter. Actually, this shows it better, doesn't it, guys? So you can see these tussocks here with this pony here and like a little bit of flat grass. So just try to remember that when we talk about winter and tussocky grassland and the importance of that for the Marsh Fritillary. So roast pasture, it's predominantly unimproved, guys, and it closely mimics natural grasslands. Unimproved is a term that we use for those grasslands that have escaped modern agricultural processes. So things like the addition of fertilizer, pesticides, these sites have been improved, and they've been improved to produce food for us. Again, so we're not going to begin criticizing farmers. We all want to eat our food, but it's been improved to have more lush grass growth, for example, for dairy cattle, for all the milk that we drink or food that we eat. But those are the terms we use. The minute a site is improved with all this addition of fertilizer, it benefits less species. So a lot of the species that we would find naturally in these semi-improved, unimproved grasslands, they're lost. So that's one of the worries that we get. So we're trying to save these unimproved grasslands, and as I said, they've declined by 90%. Yeah, so species rich, just a bit of a stat, guys, up to 50 different plant species can be found in 4 square meters. So that's how species rich they are. They're absolutely amazing. And just a couple of examples of some plants that you could see. So this is a southern marsh orchids. You get a variety of buttercups with a marsh fritillary nectarine on. You get ragged robin. You can see a crab spider here that's waiting for a pollinator to come and visit, and it'll grab it. We've got a marsh fritillary here again on a common spotted orchid. We get fleabane later in the year as we get bog asphodel. So absolutely amazing places. And this is a little bit of a hook to try and get you to come out with us. If you come out when the adults are on the wing, you'll see them in one state. You come out to do the larval surveys with us, which I'll get to in a minute, you'll see it in a different state. So you'll get to see it through the seasons. And that's when you really do appreciate just how special they are. So Marsh Fritillaries, there's one generation a year, guys. They're on the wing from approximately mid-May until the end of June. But I will add that seasonal weather can influence emergence by up to 3 weeks. So, for example, last year they were late because it was so cold. This year they're going to be early. So we say approximately mid-May to the end of June. Each season, each year is different. We are starting to see each year they're starting to get earlier because of things like climate change. So it is a what you call it, an evolving picture, but a lot of it depends on larval development in the spring. Males will emerge first and they'll patrol looking for emerging females. Males have got one thing on their mind. They want to mate with as many females as they can. Whereas females, of course, they want to mate and lay all their eggs. So as soon as they emerge, they will mate and they'll then begin egg laying. And so you can see subtle differences between males and females, again, when you get your eye in and with practice, and that can help with doing like sex ratios and things like this out on site. Devil's bit scabious is the main larval host plant, although field scabious and small scabious can also be used. And later in the season, guys, when they start to disperse, they will even be eat things like honeysuckle. But devil's bit scabious is the big one that we talk about with Marsh Fritillary conservation. This is devil's bit scabious here. As I said, it's a late flowering species, guys. It's we're talking about August, maybe July onwards. I always think it's quite sad, guys, that the marsh fritillary never actually sees it. An adult marsh fritillary, when it's on the wing, devil's bit scabious isn't in flower. So the caterpillars will see it, but the adults never do. I always think that's quite sad. So with it being a later flowering species, just for example, it's sensitive to things like hay cutting as well. So, if people are doing hay cutting, we try to work with farmers to do it sympathetically, because if you do a hay cut at the end of July, even into August, you'll cut all the devil's bit scabious before it gets a chance to set seed for the next plant. So again, it can be lost even to some sympathetic process land management practices. And this is the devil's bit scabious, what you'd see if you were walking around the reserve now. It's quite distinctive when you get your eye in. It's got it's got a quite distinctive texture, and it's got this kind of like creamy central vein through the middle. So that's what devil's bit scabious will look like now, and that's where marsh chillaries will be laying their eggs. And then if you were to join us on larval surveys, you will then see devil's bit scabious in flower. A beautiful plant. So do you want to get onto some confusing species, just because if you are going to start looking for marsh fritillaries now, just other species you could potentially confuse it for. So here's our adult again, it's on the upper side with these lovely stained glass windows, as I call it. And here's the underside again with that central bar down the middle with these eye spots. That's how I always remember them. If you have your own way of remembering them, absolutely brilliant. As long as you remember it, that's what I always think. So I'll just go through what I remember, but you can read a textbook and you can put out something different. So the first one is a small pearl-bordered fritillary. This is on the wing now, guys, and you will see them on the same site as Marsh Fritillary. So we'll start on the upper side. First of all, you can see it's rather uniform in colour. It's like the same orange coloration throughout, whereas I said here I haven't got a stained glass window. And also it's got kind of spots like that within the veins on the upper wings, whereas the Marsh Fritillary, they're in the stained glass windows. That's how I tell them apart. Then on the underside, you'll look, there is a similar row. This is how it gets its name by this row of pearls. You can see a row of pearls on the outside, as you can see here on the Marsh Fritillary. Here you've just got black spots. You haven't got these eye spots. But the other big one I go for is this duck head in the middle. So if you can see this little bit here, that's the head, and there's the eye, and there's the bill. So if it hasn't got a duck head in the middle of it, which the Marsh Fritillary lacks, that's how you can tell a small pearl-bordered and Marsh Fritillary apart. When they're in flight, of course, that's a different picture, but you will get your eye in quite quickly and you will see the differences between flying. But that's the most difficult one, I would say. But another potential one to confuse, it might not look it on the picture, but I have seen people get them confused, is the comma. So this is the comma here. It looks very, very different, guys. As you can see, it's orange, but it's got these distinctive serrated wings. But when a marsh fritillary gets a bit tattered, it gets a bit worn, or maybe something's had a go at it to try to eat it, they can also get quite tattered wings. But again, to look for, it hasn't got that lovely stained glass window impact, so you can mimic. And then the undersides are like this. I mean, look at that for camouflage. This is a species which does go over winter as an adult. It does mimic a dead leaf. There are two colour forms, guys. There can be quite a light colour form and a dark colour form. The dark colour form, this is what all adults will overwinter as, but depending on spring, you can get a second form of comma. But look at this distinctive little comma tick where it gets its name. So you shouldn't get them confused, but there is the potential. And I've been out with very experienced surveyors who know much more than me, and they've shouted Marsh Fritillary, and it's actually been a comma. We're all learning all the time, and that's what makes it great, and that's what makes it fun. But come out, that's how you learn, is what I would say. So females, so go a bit to the life cycle now. So females select the larger leaves of devil's bit scabious, as this will provide enough food for developing caterpillars. Areas of abundant plants are preferred. Lone plants are much less used. I'll come to that in a wee bit. And smaller plants are avoided. So I'm just going to quickly go through 3 slides. That's my ugly hand there. You can see some devil's bit scabious leaves here, which are quite small. These guys are a bit more bigger. And these guys are absolutely massive. These are the type of leaves that the females are looking for to lay their eggs on because they're batch layers. They lay a lot of eggs at one time, and that's lots of hungry caterpillars they've got to eat. So if they lay eggs on these small devil's bit scabious plants, there's not much food for the caterpillars, and there's risks they'll starve. Whereas if there's lots of food there, lots of big leaves, much more chance to eat. And this is why they try to select areas where there's abundant plants. So when they've finished eating this plant, they can walk over and start eating the next one. It's not to say, guys, that you won't see them on lone plants. It's not to say you won't see them on small ones. It's generally this is where you will see them. And so if you were to see a meadow with lots of devil's bit scabious, but it's all short, it doesn't mean you'll get Marsh Fritillaries there. So what encourages these larger leaves to grow is the vegetation around it. It has to compete that bit more. It has to grow stronger and more vigorously to compete with the larger grass. But if the grass is short, it hasn't got to put as much energy into that. So again, that tussocky type of grassland, that's why we want it. And that is natural as well. So a mown meadow will produce lots of small plants, which can look fantastic. And devil's bit scabious flowers looks beautiful. But if they're all small and it's all uniform, we're not going to get these tussocky areas where the caterpillars eat and where they'll eventually hibernate as well in and amongst this deep leaf litter. Excuse me. So yeah, they lay eggs in batches, guys. Numbers can vary from 50 to 500. That's a lot of eggs. A variety of things can influence that. It could be disturbance. It could be the size of the leaf. It could be a male ignoring him. It could be a photographer. There's a whole variety of reasons why. But I mean, in theory, the female wants to lay as many eggs as she can at first. Then she'll become lighter, fly out, then she'll lay less as she goes because she's got less eggs. And eggs laid on the underside of the leaves, and I say larger, abundant host plants are preferred. So just to give you a quick picture, these are the Marsh Fritillary eggs here. They're more this yellow coloration when they're first laid. They then go this reddish color before hatching. These are some type of like soldier beetle or shield bug or similar guys. So ignore those. That's just something laid next door. So these are the devil's bit scabious leaves. If I zoom out a wee bit now, hopefully you can see lots of little caterpillars here. So they just emerge, that they come out, and then they then form. They're very gregarious. They'll form communal webs where they'll then feed together and overwinter. And to give you an idea of the size of a leaf, there's one here. This isn't my photo, guys. This comes from the UK Butterflies website. Lots of amazing images, but you can see the size of the leaf and how many eggs are on there. This is why I prefer it. If that was the same female, guys, I don't know. If that was 4 individual females, again, I don't know. It's just a fantastic picture just to give you an idea of the size of the leaf and how many eggs can be laid. So yeah, incredible. So I say lots of hungry mouths eating away. So we need lots of plants and we need them quite close together. So after hatching, yeah, the caterpillars will create these silken webs around the host plant, and they'll feed and bask gregariously during sunny days. And this can go on until September. Sometimes into October in Wales is not common. Again, that's a variety of factors, guys. It depends what the season's been like, if they've been able to develop quite quickly, if they've been delayed by cool, cold weather, they may feed for longer. But give or take, we try to do our surveys in September time, but they can extend to October if the weather allows. So here's some of the webbing, guys. So we'll start here. You can see this web structure, and here's all the caterpillars here. So normally they're within the web eating, but they will come out on top to bask. Here's another example here, guys. You can see the web in here and some crass, which is like their drop-ins, and these guys are exposed on a leaf here basking. This is a stick I've used to mark them, 4.1, so you can ignore that. But just to give an example of the caterpillars eating. So again, there's the web structure, there's the plant they're eating, and here they are exposed out in the open. And another example here. So this is what we do when we do our larval web surveys later in the year. We're looking for the number of webs. The benefit of looking for webs, guys, is the caterpillars can move. They can move quite a way for being so small. They don't move as far as an adult. So if you go to do an adult survey, you're limited by weather and time. And if they're in that area where caterpillar larval webs stay where they are, give or take. To give you an example, we did some surveys last year. We saw no adults. We returned in the autumn and we found larval webs. So we know the Marsh Fritillary have been there. So it's doing both, really. So we can do adult counts to get an idea of the population size, but we also do larval web counts in the autumn. And it's addictive and it's great fun. And you'll find out more about that from John in a wee bit. Yeah, another web. Then as it comes towards winter, guys, they start to form a much denser web. And then until they get something like this, they'll go like a jet black color. And then without feeding, they'll create this really dense web low down in the vegetation, and that's where they'll overwinter. This is after the fourth instar. Yeah, without feeding, immediately construct a dense web in the vegetation. And this is why it's so important, guys, about the tussocky grasslands. If it's all uniform, if it's all flat, there's nowhere for them to hunker down for the winter. So tussocky grasslands very important because it adds structure, it adds some of the larvae you can get at the elements, and they can see the winter until they emerge back in the spring again, which can vary depending on what type of spring we get. And this is a photo, just show you a jet black larvae here. When we see that, we know, right, season's coming to an end. We better be quick and get around our sites and try and get the larval web count. They let us know when they're going to go to hibernation. And you can also follow them, guys. To give you an example, so here's a food plant which has been eaten. Hopefully you can make of that on your screens for all the crass. They've then moved away along here and they've eaten here with this web structure. And then moved along this plant here where the web is. To give you an idea how they've moved, and why they need lots of larval food plants close to each other. And they can move several meters, guys. That's how far some of these webs you can track them depending on how much larval food's available. You really can follow them. So yeah, they're agile and they all go together, and it's great to monitor them and see how they go. They become active again in the spring, guys. This, like I said, this can vary depending on how warm it is, how strong the sun is. They'll initially bask without feeding. They will molt into what's called a fifth instar. They then become lone, that they go off on their own, and then they'll pupate. They'll then go through one more skin change in the sixth instar before then going to pupate in April, May time. So this is what they're like when they come out in spring. Jet black, and they will come out without a web structure. They'll bask, they'll get warm. When it gets cool, they'll go back down the vegetation. If you were to come out with like a thermal camera, this can really be a lot warmer than the cool vegetation around it. They will then start to feed and do a rough web structure, which you can see here. And to give you an example of how small they can, this is an oak leaf, and you can see them basking. When they come up after winter, guys, they can split as well. So for very crudely, a web of 1,000 in the summer, when it comes to spring, that could split into a web of 20, 30, and 50. So you may think you've got 3 webs, and in fact, you've only got 1. So that's why we try to do our counts in the autumn to give a more accurate representation of the number of webs. But spring webs can also be particularly fun to monitor. I particularly enjoy it because there's nothing else really going on in January and February, so you can come out and look for these guys, which is quite fun. And then this is just to show you one that's molted into a fifth instar. He's about to go, sorry, he or she, sorry, excuse me, guys. That little fella's about, oh, I've done it again. This caterpillar's about to go rogue. He's about, oh, I'm going to be quiet. Going to go off by itself and eat. Let's move on. Dear me. And then this is to show you feed and damage. You can get your eye into feed and damage, guys. This is in the spring. Look at this tattered devil's bit scabious plant here. And there's the caterpillars on their way. So again, with getting your eye in, you can also spot feed and damage. And zoomed in, there's a devil's bit scabious leaf that's been absolutely battered. And again, it's as much fun as you want to make it, guys. I'm just going to show you some of the signs that you can look for. It's great fun. But it is during this stage when the parasitoids are noticed, guys. So if you look here, there's some caterpillars, and we've got some white cocoons in the middle. Those are the emerging grubs of the wasps. As I said, these guys are rarer than the Marsh Fritillary, so they deserve to be protected in their own right. But you can monitor parasite load if you monitor spring webs, which you need specific sites where you can do that. And then here's the caterpillars back in the summer, and there's a little parasitoid wasp there. So these caterpillars are very small. If I zoom in, there it is there. So yeah, fascinating life cycle. This is where all the interesting stuff is, guys. Forget your lions and your tigers and your elephants right under your feet. This is where all the interesting stuff is. And we've got it all here, right in Wales. It's right here underneath our feet. We're so lucky what we've got here. And then here's a picture of the pupae of the lot. Oh, dear me, of the cocoon. This is taken by Amanda Evans, who's one of our partners for Carmarthenshire County Council. I can't take credit for this photo. It's formed low down in the vegetation. This one's on devil's bit scabious leaf. I think, arguably, guys, that's the most beautiful pupa in the UK. Absolutely stunning. To see those in the wild is quite rare, but if you ever come across one, it's always good to know what you're looking at. But look at that, absolutely beautiful. Anyway, better move on because I can talk forever, as John will tell you. So what are we actually going to do then? That's the Marsh Fritillary. We know its life cycle. We know about the metapopulation structure. We know what we need to do. How are we going to do it? So we've received funding from the Heritage Fund for a Nature Networks Fund Round 3 project. This is funded by the Nature Networks programme. It's being delivered by the Heritage Fund on behalf of the Welsh Government. The Nature Networks Fund aims to strengthen the resilience of Wales' network of protected sites, to build capacity to strengthen and upscale future delivery for nature, and actively encourage community engagement. So when I talked to you before about we look after the grassland and we use the Marsh Fritillary indicator of success, this project is all about the protected sites network. So there's lots of grassland which has been notified as very important, and there's networks in place to try and connect at landscape scale. This is what we're aiming to do by creating a Marsh Fritillary Recovery Partnership. There's lots of fantastic organisations working on marshy conservation throughout Wales. There's Inc, there's the Wildlife Trust, there's NRW, there's a National Trust, there's a variety of individual landowners. There's lots of brilliant work going on, not just butterfly conservation. But what we want to do is we want to bring everybody together because everyone's doing fantastic work, but it's common just to get your head down and deliver what you want to do without talking. And so what we want to do is we want to get everybody together so we can all talk, we can identify priorities at the landscape scale. Think back to that first crude map I showed the metapopulation, so we can identify opportunities and priorities to create meaningful projects to connect, aid connection of habitats and metapopulations. So let's all look who's doing what, where are we doing it, how are we doing it, what funding have you got, who are you talking to, so we don't duplicate efforts, we're not competing for funding, and we can work together collaboratively. So that's what we want to do. So there's lovely Wales, guys. Imagine these little red polygons are a metapopulation. So within there is a site that supports the Marsh Fritillary, and that little buffer zone around it is how far the Marsh Fritillary will fly. This is an old map, guys. It has of 2019, so pinch of salt because that's not the current picture. This then shows the priority network for grassland connectivity, lowland grassland, and then you can see quite a lot overlaps with our metapopulations. And then I then put our butterfly conservation as part of the landscapes on. You can see the overlap. So this has been, you can see that what we want to do actually links with the grassland network where the Marsh Fritillary are. So it's that connection. It's not us what's making up as we go along. This also aligns with Welsh Government targets to connect grassland connectivity. A crude example of what we're going to try and do, guys. So this is an example. It's made up on the spot for this presentation. I'm going to zoom in on Ceredigion. Here we go. Just imagine these three metapopulations here. This one circle here, second circle, and this kind of two joined circles there. Here we go. So back to our example before. There's the site that supports the Marsh Fritillary. That's how far it will fly. You can see these two sites are isolated. These three sites are still connected to the metapopulation to some scale. Let's just say an example comes along that we've got an opportunity to restore this site here, or to buy it, or to do a reintroduction of the Marsh Fritillarys. What is that achieving at the landscape scale? Because that site is still isolated, it's not part of the metapopulation, and it's not going to aid the connectivity. Now, this is always an ideal world scenario. Instead, if we were to work here, I'll move that again, then we connect it all up, and there's that movement between, and we get the larger metapopulation functioning. So that's what we want to try and do. We want to talk to each other, who's doing what, how can we do it, look opportunities to do it, as opposed to perhaps reacting to funding or looking at an old site that used to support Marsh Fritillary. Is it still going to be part of this functioning metapopulation? That's what we want to try and achieve. And it doesn't have to just be Meadows of Devil's Bit Scabious. Very simplistic slide here, guys, from a fantastic paper, Dennis et al. This is resources that butterflies need. N equals nectar, L equals larval host plant, R equals roosting. Let's say we've got a field full of Devil's Bit Scabious, which has got an abundant larval food plants. Where do the adults feed on? I mentioned earlier that Devil's Bit Scabious isn't in flower. So if we've got a field full of nothing but Devil's Bit Scabious, what are the adults going to feed on? If there's no nectar nearby, what are they going to feed on? So if there's a hay meadow next door, or there's a patch of bramble, scrub's very important, which I've seen, guys, we have to take that into consideration. And roosting, guys, is where do the adults go at night? Where do they go when it's tipping down with wind and tipping down with rain or it's blowing a gale? What do the adults do? It's not always sunny and beautiful like it is now. Sometimes we have quite, poor weather. So it's thinking about that at landscape scale as well to build into this, not just the historic Devil's Bit scabious larval fuel, which is really important. So, so there's the larval. That's again the larval requirements. But what about roost? This is what I'm really interested in, guys. This is an adult butterfly. That was thinking about 9 o'clock at night. I stayed with it all evenings as late as I could. I went home. I came back about 6 in the morning, and it was still there. And you can make out maybe some bits of dew on it. And it was hunkered down, low down in the vegetation, right next to a bit of bramble. Scrub is really important, guys. We don't want to eradicate scrub. It has to be managed, absolutely, but we don't want to eradicate it because it is very important, and it also does provide nectar. So having this at the landscape scale with tussocky, basically we want a mosaic. The mosaic of different habitat structures throughout the landscape is what the Marsh Fritillary needs, not just, traditional fields of Devil's Bit scabious. And another slide from an older paper, guys, but just to give an example, this is temperature. So if we just have like, one type of grassland throughout the landscape, we're going to get the same temperature gradients. And if it's baking hot or if it's freezing cold, that's not great. Whereas if we've got a little bit of everything, it provides areas for warming up for basking. It provides areas to cool down if it's hot. It provides areas to warm up if they're cold. We want to provide a little bit of everything. So that's the idea of providing a little bit of everything at landscape scale. And it's the resources that are needed throughout the life cycle of the Marsh Fritillary. So what are we actually going to do then? We've got a 20-month development project, which started on the 1st of April last year and runs to 31st of May of this year. And we've got a dedicated Wales Mastery Project Recovery Project Officer, who's a lovely John Hitchens, who you're going to hear from at the end. This is a development project, guys, but this is just the start. This is a long-term aim, but we want to run throughout Wales with this partnership. So we're already starting to think about what comes next. So although we're cracking on with what we've got to deliver, which John will come to, we're already starting to think what's next. So as I said, we want to create this Wales Mastery Recovery Partnership with key landowners and partners. What we want to do is we want to undertake an updated assessment of where are we, who's doing what, where are they doing it, if people are surveying their sites, is it brilliant? Are they doing it the same way as everybody else? Is the data transferable? I mentioned that state of butterflies report, which give us those figures so we know how the Marsh Fritillary is performing in Wales. That is so important, guys, because if we didn't have that, we would be looking at the UK picture. Knowing what's happening in Wales it means we can adapt. But the only way we can do that is if people collect data the same way. So if we can make sure people are all recording the same, similar times, similar methodologies, it builds that picture. That means all the data is that much more important. So that's one thing. We also want to consolidate information, who's doing what and where, as I said. Lots of great work ongoing. Let's talk to each other more so we know. So argument's sake, I want to get a project going down here, as does John. I'll tell you what, John, you crack on with that. I'll go and work down here. It's divide and conquer. Or do you want to handle that, John? I'll come give you a hand. It's that building that partnership at landscape. So it does exist, guys. Organizations do talk to each other, but we want to do it at Wales wide. So we're creating local hubs in different areas, which will then feed into a Wales wide strategy. And we can talk about what's working, what's not. We can talk about successes, but also failures, guys. What hasn't worked and why? Or if my Marsh Fritillary sites have crashed, I'm a site manager, I take that personally. I speak to John, actually, so have mine, because we know what's happened at the landscape. There's something that's impacted the Marsh Fritillaries at a landscape scale, whether it be bad weather or that boom and bust cycle I talked about. So it's just building that bigger picture at the landscape, not an individual site basis. But to do this, guys, we really have to increase our capacity to survey within and around core marsh tree metapopulations. We've got some amazing volunteer guys. I can't say thank you enough to the volunteers and what they do for butterfly conservation, but there's not many of them. And there's a lot of sites, as you can see. So we need more people to come out and help us monitor these sites to give us that key information we need to make these informed decisions of where we need to connect sites up, where they disappeared, where are they hanging on, where's the opportunities to connect them, where is good habitat between sites. So we're going to train new volunteers, partners, landowners. The idea is to ensure a legacy of skilled individuals to aid long-term monitoring. So, some of our volunteers, I mean, they're members of staff. They're absolutely absolutely brilliant, that they lead other volunteers. We can't say we couldn't do nothing without our volunteers, but we do need more. So please do come and get involved. If you're getting excited by this, I hope you are. I'm excited just talking about it. I wish I could come out and help more. And John will let you know how you can. And if you know nothing about Marsh Frittillaries, that's grand. I knew nothing not long ago. Or if you know a lot, come and share your knowledge with other people who are trying to learn. It's that, we're all interested in it. We all want to see the best, and it's absolutely, you'll see some fantastic sites where other people can't go to as well. So yeah, for doing all this, find out who's doing what, where are they doing it, doing our surveys, getting more volunteers. It'll allow us to update and consolidate habitat quality mapping, and then we create that landscape scale focus to identify opportunities and priorities. So we can see where can we put our limited resource funding in the sector, guys, is getting less and less and less. We've got to start making some really difficult decisions. Where do we prioritize our resources? Where do we prioritize the funding that's available? And it's to have the biggest impact, the most meaningful impact, as opposed to perhaps looking after a lone site. We want to look at opportunities to connect sites up. And through agreement and collaboration with our partners and landowners, we're creating recommendations and costed plans. And this will create, I hate the term, but shovel-ready projects for future funded applications. All too often, guys, funding will become available. Oh, there's some funding available. You've got 2 months to apply. Oh dear me. And that's the problem, Sam. You haven't got time to react to that. So we're going to create these costed plans very crudely. This could be John's field. So I'm picking on John a lot today. This could be John's field. And all John needs, he needs a site grazed. To graze it, he needs some fencing, he needs some water trough, he needs some handling facilities. We could cost that up for John. We could go and walk on how much fencing is needed, where to put the water troughs, create a grazing plan, the livestock, and it's there. Funding becomes available. John knows what he needs. He can submit that bid, and you can get the money in to deliver it. That's the idea. We're not precious about who delivers it, as long as it's delivering for the Marsh Fritillary. And that is the idea of the costed plan, which is a big element. We've already done some. We'll be doing more. And the ultimate aim, guys, is to produce a Marsh Fritillary strategy for Wales. So the idea being that we're engaging with partners now, we're all working together. It is collaboration. BC may just facilitate it. I said there's lots of other experts for other organisations working in Marsh Frittillaries out there. We will all work together to create this Marsh Fritillary strategy, and then we can make the most informed decisions to ensure that this delightful butterfly and its habitat in Wales for many more years to come. I might have gone over a wee bit there, John. I apologise. Yes, I have. Sorry. Told you I could talk forever.
That's all right. That's great, Alan. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'll just give a brief update on the project so far and what's to come, and then you guys got opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments. So this map shows some of our volunteers and people attending the training days that have come out with us. The purple stars on the map show where last year we did some larval web training days. So Carnarvon, Carmarthen, Ceredigion, Gower, and Neath Talbot. You can see on the map the orange areas are the Marsh Fritillary metapopulation. So we're trying to cover as much as we can, get volunteers up and trained and out visiting sites right across the Marsh Fritillary range in Wales. We've got upcoming training, so that's where the green stars are. So if any of those are anywhere near you, then you've got an opportunity to come out. The training days are free. They're run by a specialist contractor who's an expert in the field. They'll be in Caerphilly, Carmarthen, Ceredigion, Noranda, and Pembrokeshire. Next one, please, Alan. And then so far, like I say, we've done the training days, done online talks. We did 2 last year. We've done 2 this week, including this one. Increased volunteer numbers, so we've got some more volunteers coming out with us, but we need more. Creating costed plans, like Alan was just talking about, speaking to landowners. Specialist contractors, we've had them out doing habitat assessments, monitoring, colony visits, and right across the area, right across South, West, and North Wales. The regional partnership hubs that Alan said, some partnerships were already sort of in action. I was at Pembrokeshire one today, and fantastic meeting, lots of people involved, all telling us the exciting projects that they're working on and how we can work together. And we're trying to set them up or improve and increase the ones that we're already working on right across the region. Promotional project film, so that is Alan starring in that at the centre there, and then the film crew out on site. That film's available on the project webpage, which is the web address you can see there, and also on Butterfly Conservation YouTube channel. And my contact details at the bottom there if you want to get in touch. But what's on the way, so how you can get involved if you'd like to, we've got all those training days that I just talked about. Youth volunteer opportunity for 6 weeks. The deadline has just passed for applications. Some of you that are on here now may have applied, so you'll hear back from us next week on what the next steps for that are. But hopefully we'll get them out and experience what the conservation sector's like, what it's about, what we do, what our partners do, and just give them a good experience of getting into the sector really, and hopefully help with their CVs too. And then community minibus trips. So if you're part of a community group or know of one that might like to visit any of the Marsh Fritillary sites near them, we can get a minibus to them, take them out and give them, show them around, and you can go and see the butterflies on the wing or the larval webs. More ongoing volunteer opportunities, so there's surveying going on, and just get in touch if you're interested in those. Expanding partnership hubs, as I just said. Habitat assessment training, so that's for professionals and people that are interested in actually being able to go out and site and assessing the actual habitat for the Marsh Fritillary. Further costed plans, want to improve on that, do more landscape scale and work towards what comes after this project. The project funding runs out. It officially runs to the end of, I think it's March next year, but we want things ready to go for the next time we get some funding. Then increase surveying and monitoring, that would be through more volunteers and more funding. Increase landowner engagement, we're getting involved with as many people as we can, try and help them with managing their land. And then a project legacy film, which will be filmed throughout the summer. And that will be about what the project's achieved and then what will follow the project and what the hopes and aspirations for afterwards, and that the hubs carry on and that the volunteers carry on and we keep working for the butterfly even when this project's finished.